the thing of this book is, it's to say the problems are complicated, but the solutions, they're not easy, but they're simple.
Do you want to run through a few of them when you talk to
Well, I love that you start, your first one is about family.
Well,
you say we need to go back to the old-fashioned way.
You know what the most basic unit of government is? It's not the city, it's not the state, it's not the federal government. It's mom and dad raising kids. That's where we are first governed. And if we don't get it there, the basic lessons of right and wrong, it's a huge breakdown that has an economic consequence. What I try to do in the first chapter is lay out the economic rationale for why good families make a difference. Do you realize in America we have a $300 billion a year dad deficit? That's how much we taxpayers pay because dads have disappeared and don't take care of their children. If we talk about poverty, 2/3 of poverty in this country disappear if the mothers of children marry the fathers of those kids.
Think of Japan, the word poverty may not come to mind, but it does exist, especially among single mothers. I'm Kurumi Mori for Bloomberg News in Tokyo. More than half of all single moms in Japan live in poverty.
I mean, sometimes I think that they probably don't even get halfway down the CV. They just see that I ain't worked for 10 years, I'm a single mum to 2 kids, would prefer a job what could work around those kids because I'm a mum first. I don't want to be going out working and never seeing the kids. And I think that they'll probably just see that and think, oh, well, she's not suitable enough. You know, we want someone who can be the regular for us, at our beck and call.
Now, my great-grandparents, Gabriel and Eliza Jackson, were slaves and sharecroppers in Orange County, Virginia. I am a direct descendant of slaves. My grandfather was born there to a father and a mother who had been slaves. And by the way, their family was more intact than the black family is today. And I'm telling you that slavery did not destroy the black family, even though it certainly was an attack on the black family. It made it difficult. But I'll tell you that the programs that began in the 60s, the programs that began to tell women, you don't need a man in the home, the government will take care of you. That began to tell men, you don't need to be in the home, the government will take care of this woman and take care of these children. That's when the black family began to deteriorate. In 1960, most black children were raised in 2-parent monogamous families.
How you guys doing? My name is Paul Green. I'm the founder of Irish Productions, green screen photography, and the director of this here film. Currently, 30% of all families in America will be defined as a single-parent household. For those of you who don't know, a single-parent household is a household that only has one parent. Now, 30% of all households in America right now, as we just stated, are currently headed by a single parent, but only 8% of those households are headed by a single father. That's actually up from 1% in 1960. That means of the 30% of the households that's headed by one parent, 92% of them are headed by women. Now we break those numbers down further, we realize there's a racial gap in those numbers because the Asian community only accounts for 14% of their entire population identifying as single parents. For the Caucasian and white community is 23%, for the Hispanic community is 50%, and for the Black or African American community is 68%. Now what makes those numbers even more interesting is if you flip them around, that's literally the racial wealth gap in America. Currently, we go by median household income averages, right? The Asian community averages $83,000. The white community averages $69,000. The Hispanic community averages $51,000. And the Black community averages $40,000. Now, these numbers were taken as of 2017. Obviously, the issue of the wealth gap in America goes a lot deeper than just single-parent households. But it is a fact that you're 4 times more likely to live in poverty if you came out of a single-parent household. So it is no coincidence that if you literally flip around the numbers of who has the highest rate of single-parent households, that you will realize the exact same order as who has the lowest of men in those same households. So where did all this start? Well, we can trace the origins back really far. All right, so like I said, we're going to explain this today. We're going to go all the way back. And we're going to come all the way forward. By all the way back, I'm saying we're going to go all the way to BC time. So right now, we're going to deal with 332 BC all the way to about 30, 40 BC or somewhere around there. And it's going to all make sense to you guys as we go further into it. both Greece and Rome invaded Egypt. When they did that, they brought their gods, they brought their culture, they brought their customs. So what did some of these customs consist of? Well, as you can see on the screen, it says in classical antiquity, writers such as Herodotus, Plato, Xenophon, and Athenaeus, and many others, keyword there is many others, explored aspects of homosexuality in Greece. Now, the homosexuality in itself is not a problem. Here's where the problem comes up. The most widespread and socially significant form of same-sex sexual relations in ancient Greece was between adult men and prepubescent or adolescent boys, known as pedastry, meaning boy love. It was a relationship between an older male and an adolescent youth. A boy was considered a boy until he was able to grow a full beard. Okay, now, if you read further into this, it literally tells you that they slept together. As you're looking at these slides that are going over your screen right now, you're seeing a bunch of images. These are vases, these are paintings, these are sculptures from ancient Greece that you could look up yourself, where you see them with little boys playing around with their private parts. You see them with grown men doing this too, but you see them with little boys doing this as well. Now, if these images and that writing isn't enough for you, let's go a little bit even deeper. The terms alpha and beta. Okay, if you look at the actual meaning of alpha and beta, alpha was the dom in a homosexual relationship and beta was the femme in a homosexual relationship. Now, as we know about Greek culture, the purest love, by their own words, was between men. Okay? And it was usually an older man and a younger boy. So essentially, beta was more often than not a younger boy, and the alpha was the more dominant, older, more experienced, bearded man. All right, now, why did they have this sick ass process of sleeping with these little boys or thinking it was okay to have any type of sexual relations or love for these little boys, right? The sacred band of Thebes was a troop of select soldiers consisting of 150 pairs of male lovers, which formed the entire force of the Theban army in the 4th century BC, ending Spartan domination. Now, I'm going to say to you guys again, look at this, 150 pairs of male lovers. So they all had a pair of a male lover. That would put them at what, 300 people. Now, let's talk about women, because like I said, up to this point, we haven't really talked about women yet. So let's go back to the original slide that we were first at the first time. Okay, if you look under pedastry, you'll see they do have a segment about women. It's in parentheses because that's what women were to the Greek and Rome cultures. They were in the back of their heads, but that's neither here nor there. Marriages in ancient Greece between men and women were also age structured, with men in their 30s commonly taking on wives in their early teens. Why is that a thing? We still have that problem in culture today. Not just American culture, world culture. If you go over the whole world, right, and you can use any search engine, I guarantee you, if you type in the wall or women hitting the wall or women complaining about the wall or women over 30, right? You can type this into your search engine today. It doesn't even matter where in the world you're at, and you will see a bunch of articles about women complaining that when they hit the age of 30, if they don't already have a man who's already committed to them, most of the men will then seek women who are younger than them. Now, they'll usually say early 20s, right? But we all know the legal age is 18. What grown-ass man in his right frame of mind is going to sleep with an 18-year-old? Right? But again, these are the cultures, right? This is the beginnings of cultures that we adopted. And this is why I said I'm going all the way back. I'm going to bring everything forward for you guys. Traditionally speaking, men, especially of the Caucasian descent, tend to push women to the side once they get out of those early teen, young years, and they go right back after women who are still in that same age bracket. All right? So what do we know now? We know that culturally, the ancient Greeks and Romans who invaded ancient Egypt believed in pedophilia, and they believed that if you were going to deal with a woman, you should be dealing with a woman who's a lot younger than you, but the ultimate love is between a man and a boy. We know that, right? But we're going to jump forward again really quick because I want to paint some more pictures for you guys before we jump backwards, okay? Because this is going to get deep, and it's going to get deep fast. So, if you are convicted of child molestation in the state of California right now, I'm just going to show you guys how subconsciously a lot of this stuff is still going on. you could be sentenced anywhere from 1 to 6 years in prison with fines up to $5,000. Okay? In most states across the country, child molestation is still considered a misdemeanor. So because people know this, it's literally known that a lot of men who are pedophiles, or a lot of people for that matter, if you are convicted of child molestation, you basically get no time. You basically get no time. And they know this. This is why a lot of times you won't see penetration. You'll just see touching and rubbing and stuff when people go after kids, because they know as long as there's no penetration, for the most part, they won't get time. They also know that they won't get time if it's just pornography. They won't get a lot of time. Oftentimes, someone who gets caught with child pornography doesn't even have to register as a sex offender. I have a statistic up on the screen that I'm going to again read to you. White offenders constituted over 80% of offenders convicted of any child pornography offense. 80.9 to be exact. I repeat, white offenders constituted over 80% of offenders convicted of any child pornography offense. This is a fact. It's on the screen. You guys can look at it, right? But it's not just children that we don't protect in this country. And I'm telling you guys that it started then. This is why I said I'm going back and pulling forward, right? It's women we don't protect in this country. If you guys never heard of Elisa Gonzalez, she attended Marshall University. She was raped. When she was claimed, she reported the rape. Okay? When she reported the rape, they had an appeal, questioned her about whether or not they got raped, decided to let the guy stay on campus until they figured things out. He stayed on campus, not only patronized her about raping her, but was able to rape 2 other women because he was allowed to stay on campus before anything happened to him. Alicia transferred. Let's look at Jacob from Baylor. Jacob from Baylor raped a woman and served absolutely no time. 23-year-old. Former president of a fraternity on campus raped a woman, served no time. Brock Turner raped the unconscious woman. His dad defined it as 20 minutes of action, as if it wasn't a big deal. He got 6 months in jail. Again, there are people who got in a fight and got more than 6 months in jail. A fight. I mean, people who do petty offenses get more time than these people. This is where the Me Too movement came from. This is where all that anger came from. I mean, I could keep going, guys. There was a man in Anchorage, Alaska who spent no time behind bars for strangling an unconscious woman. There's a Texas doctor who went free after assaulting a patient while she was sedated. You hear about the high school girl who reported her rape immediately to no avail. Police never even spoke to the alleged attackers, okay? So these women today in America, more or less, are just as defenseless as the women in ancient Greece was. But did they stay that way? Let's see how they responded in ancient Greece to this boy love, pedophilia, man power, bro code, alpha culture. Let's see what they did. So, alright, so let's dig into what that does. Alright, now lesbian, right? If you look it up, it comes from the Greek word lesbos. Why is this important? What did you do as a Greek woman if you were above teen age and you were a female? Well, if you wanted to be treated fairly, if you wanted sexual gratification, you were probably going to have to deal with women, or at least get rid of the men, because this is a fact. They used you as incubators. I mean, you couldn't vote. You had no right. So what did the ancient Greece women do? Well, there's an island off the coast of the Aegean Sea called Lesbos. They went to the island of Lesbos and basically established their own culture. That's where the myth of the modern Amazon came from. People think that Amazons are these big, burly black women who are running around and killing lions and tigers and stuff, and when it's quite the opposite. The Amazons were a group of ancient Greek women, okay? And if you guys ever watched a movie like Wonder Woman or something like that, but if you really look at any movie that has to do with Amazons, right? Any portrayal of the Amazons is always white people. There might be some black people mixed in, but it's white people. It's Greece, right? But anyway, all around the Aegean and the Black Sea, the Greeks reported seeing women who were physically fit more so than they were used to women being, and they were warriors. Okay, now the reason these women were warriors is because they had to hunt, provide, and protect themselves, because the Greek men weren't doing it, right? And they were even talking about how some of these women would cut off their breast so that they could shoot their bow and arrows better. We're Amazons. This is a fact. That's what they called them. That was like a disparaging term. Calling them an Amazon would be like the modern equivalent of calling a black man in America a nigger. That's why it was an insult. That was their way of saying these were masculine, non-feminine women. But what they weren't telling you is that these women were masculine and non-feminine because they had no protection or providing from their men. So they had to become their own protectors and providers. They left that part off. Now, what do you see a lot of American women doing now? Like I said, America currently has the highest single parent rate in the country. Okay? What do you see a lot of American women doing now?
I got here. Why am I trying to be a single mom by choice? So, let's just say that I have not had a serious committed relationship since probably 2004.
Single parent of one child by circumstance, but then I became a solo parent of 4 more children by choice. Now,
the time to talk about other people's opinions and judgments once you make the choice to become a single mom by choice or a choice parent.
I played a clip from you guys about a group of women who literally go out to become single mothers on purpose because they feel like they have their own money, they can provide for themselves. They felt unprotected by men, they don't like men, so I will use artificial insemination and have my own child. You stay away from me. You harm me. Look, I'm showing, not only am I showing you guys the images of all the hostility you see towards the modern Western American woman and the modern Western American man, I'm also showing you the ancient Greek women fighting their men. So all that hostility when you say men aren't this and men aren't that, and especially black women, because like I said, we're going to do this case study predominantly on the black community because we are 68% of that 30%. We are a matriarchy. Right? And like I said, I'm breaking this down step by step. It's all gonna make sense by the end. Stay with me, guys. Okay? Now, if those tweets and screenshots wasn't enough to prove to you, okay, that we're living in a modern rebellion, we're basically living in the modern era of the Amazons. Okay? Alright? I want you to listen to this clip, Mr. Demetri Jackson, on the ideology of the modern black woman, or women in general, not even just the black women, today.
So, the climate between the black man and the black woman, I mean, so the black woman has always, women in general, let's start there, have always been not revered as they should be. And that is because, really, because men are just threatened. That's what it really comes down to. They can be threatened for a lot of different reasons. That's very historical where we're at. Necessarily see the same old, black, as many black marriages or marriages, period, how we did in the 50s and the 60s, but I don't think that you see that in general. I think that you have a lot of black people who aren't necessarily thinking like that. Like, they want their love, they want their, happy ending, but for a lot of them, it's, a lot of black women are a lot more goal-oriented. Because a lot more women are going to college, a lot more women are getting education than being in the workforce. So I feel like the idea of a woman needing a man, that has shifted. I think the respect level between the black woman and the black man, I don't necessarily think that it's gotten worse. I think that black women are becoming a lot more independent and aren't as dependent, like I said, on black men. And for that reason, black men are now forced to pay more attention.
Now, what you likely noticed in that clip was women don't need a man. They have their own money now. They can do their own thing now. They don't have to rely on you anymore. So now they're going to challenge you to actually step up and do what you need to do. Literally the same things that were just echoed in that sentiment is exactly what drove the ancient Greek women to the island of Lesbos in the first place, which made them start sleeping with each other, providing and protecting for each other, which is where the term lesbian came from in the first place. That's part of why I'm talking about all this. Now, let's go back to ancient Egypt, okay? None of that shit existed in ancient Egypt. If you really study ancient Egypt, what you will come to find that women played a predominant role. Women were gods, women were deities, women ruled in ancient Egypt. As a matter of fact, because most people will tell you Nefertiti, who was a black woman, or Cleopatra, who was a black woman. You might hear about King Tut, or others, but generally speaking, those are some of the first two that you're going to hear. On top of that, the Great Sphinx was a black woman. Okay, the temple of Hathor has her own temple in Egypt. Hathor is a female Egyptian god. Okay, I'm putting all these images across the screen while I'm saying this just to show you that in Egyptian and African culture, the black woman was never looked at as a second-class citizen. The black woman never had to go and find an island to get away from us. You weren't going to find any images of us fighting them, literally fighting them. You're not going to hear about any ancient Egyptians calling their women Amazons or talking about how they're being overly masculine or cutting off their breasts or none of that. Cleopatra is one of the most feminine women to ever exist, right? She embraced her femininity and she was a pharaoh on the same level as Julius Caesar. Even now, you could go on a Osiris Tours, which is on the screen, and you could book a tour of Egypt that literally has nothing to do with anything but women. That's how powerful the ancient Egyptian women were. As a matter of fact, it says when we think of ancient civilizations, we usually assume that women were not treated as well as they are today. However, Egypt treated its women better than any of the other cultures within the ancient world. And here we are sitting with the largest single parent rate in America. Why? Because we adopted customs that were not our own. The black woman and the black man always believed in the divine femininity and the divine masculine. They always believed that they each served each other's important roles. That does not mean that there was no tidbits of sexism. There's tidbits of sexism that go each way. But generally speaking, it is a fact. No one treated women better in the ancient civilizations than the Egyptians did. The women in ancient African cultures were treated like queens. They were made goddesses. They were deities. They were treated fair. They were sculptures. They were happy. And more importantly than all that, you didn't see any pedophilia. Okay? So as a matter of fact, what I'm about to show you guys is called the Turin erotic. Okay? The Turin erotic. Look it up. It's looked at as one of the earliest forms of what you could describe as pornographic images. Now, I'm not showing you guys this to be aggressive or to be pompous or anything like that, but I'm just going to show it to you. When you seen sex coming from ancient Egypt, this is what you see. Men, women. Do you see images of childbirth? If you did see kids, it was childbirth shit like this. That's what you seen. You did not see little boys playing with grown men's peckers. You didn't see that. You didn't see that. You see men and you see women. Look, Blicky. She about to land on the Blicky. He pulling her hair. That's how they were giving it up. So these are not your cultures and these are not your customs. These cultures and customs of loving your own women, these ain't our customs. And these customs lead to single parenthood. It leads to women turning their backs on the men. And it leads to frustration. Now we're going to move forward. Okay, so we dealt with the ancient. Now let's deal with what happened when we came over to America in the first place. So where did all this start? Well, we can trace the origins back really far. Of course, we could go back to slavery and we could talk about how it used to be a practice back at slave plantations to take the biggest, strongest slave, always a man, and do what they call buck breaking. Essentially what buck breaking was when overseers or slave masters would come, take the alpha male or the strongest, most dominant male and anally rape him in front of the entire plantation. And this was done to basically say to them, no matter how big, no matter how strong you get, we're bigger, we're stronger, we're more powerful. So that kind of started the degradation mentally of the protection that the male is supposed to represent in the black woman's head. Of course, well, we're talking about the black community, so we gotta talk about segregation, right? Hey, brother, can you let the people know who you are and what you represent?
I am Janae Okafor, and always first I represent my family, the Okafor family. I currently live in Baltimore. I graduated from Morgan in 2017, Bachelor of Arts in Speech Communications, and I am currently getting my master's degree in project management at Morgan State University as well. Well, let me not say that. I don't hate to say this. I hate what is about to be said, but it has to be said. Integration was probably one of the worst things that ever happened to the black family. Because what happened is the idea was presented as if integration would mean that we would then have the same rights as our white counterparts. But what actually happened is, rather than having equal rights, it was it was the right for us to try to be white. we stopped doing community things together. We stopped the community policing. We stopped the community taking care of each other, where it's your black neighbor down the street will whoop your child's ass if they saw them doing something crazy. Like, those were the type of things that built our community. Of course.
But if we go further, right, there's a specific set of policies called the Great Society Acts that President Johnson passed during the mid to early 1960s. These policies were put in place to help people, to cut down on the poverty gap, right? So it included things like Medicare, Medicaid, but what we want to talk about specifically is what it did as far as housing vouchers and rent subsidies and food stamps for people who were struggling in poverty who had kids. Now, the part a lot of them didn't tell you that is in these same policies, right? You could get these rental vouchers, you could get these food stamp vouchers, you can get all this assistance, right? But there was a condition, and that condition was for you to get all this assistance, the man had to be gone. This was a big deal because it was the first time, really honestly, in world history, on a massive scale, that the government was essentially saying, we're taking the burden of providing away from the man, and we're putting it on ourselves. So currently, after 50 years of effort, the United States have put over $20 trillion into programs that were funded or started, social service programs, put into place by the Great Society Acts. At the time in 1966, the current poverty rate was 14.7%. But what we find is that as near as 2012, the poverty rate was 15%. That means after almost 60 years, all these policies put in place by President Johnson literally increased and did not decrease the poverty rate at all. Essentially what started to happen was the program became a crutch. The program was supposed to be something for, struggling parents, and maybe your man passed away in the military, or maybe he's in prison. And it was supposed to be a program to help you get back on your feet. But what people started to realize was life is easier to just live through this program than it is actually having to work, actually having to obtain higher education, or actually having to get degrees. So people started to find ways to get this money without actually earning it, aka extending it sometimes for their entire life. And they did this through starting jobs and stopping jobs. They did this through having more children so they could use the claim that they need more money. There are literally groups out there today that are single mother support groups that claim between the government and yourself, you can take care of your own kids. You don't need a man around to do that. Estimated from a clip that I showed you guys early, the daddy deficit. What the daddy deficit is that's $3.2 trillion that go to social services programs that are predominantly only really cover women, such as food stamps, WIC, housing vouchers, welfare, and things of that nature, right? $3.2 trillion go into that year. And the argument, and the reason it's called the daddy deficit, is because the argument is, if we were encouraging families, if we were encouraging these women to take the time to find a man who actually wanted to be into a family with them, and we kept our traditional structure, instead of the government having to replace that $3.2 trillion, the man would be putting in that $3.2 trillion, which would free up government money to go into other programs. The biggest thing that hurt the black community when it came to segregation is we used to have a whole entire sections of cities, sections of blocks, black Wall Streets, all our own businesses, all of our own communities, right? There pretty much was no government support because at that time you were black, you weren't considered a citizen. So part of another thing that happened when integration happened, which goes back to that Great Society Act that we were just talking about, is we became part of the melting pot of the greater American culture. But despite affirmative action and other things that were put in place by the Great Society Act, of course, we all know workplace discrimination still continues.
Of course, we know that drugs, mass incarceration of black men and black women, and the breakdown of our family, because they've been breaking down our family since they were selling people at the chopping block like chattel. But it got really serious in the 20th century, 60s, 50s, 70s, because not only did things start to change, if you even started to listen, let's go to as far as the 80s. Now, you got the 60s, you got the civil rights movement, black people were still together. You got the Black Panthers in the 70s. Black people are still together. But look at the 80s. Look at what happened when rap music came out. Rap music was a great expression of what we as blacks were going through. But you'll notice black music were coming from men that were being raised by single parents.
For me, right, I was born in 94, so I can talk about from like the late 90s, early 2000s to now. Late 90s, early 2000s, like they would, you know what I mean? The music literally disrespected black women all the time, and that was just a thing. We just did it, it was cool. And I feel like around like the early 2000s going into that, black women were like, all right, like this gotta stop. You know what I mean? Like to the level, I'm talking about, yeah, you can say like bitches and pop and all that good stuff, but I'm talking about like back in the day, I feel like it was like OD disrespectful, and it was like a norm to be a player, to be a pimp, right? Cat Williams or PIMP, like all that stuff was like, you had to have multiple girls.
And these black people whose businesses were destroyed, we all know Black Wall Street was destroyed. We all know about what happened with Martin Luther King and how he was assassinated despite protesting peacefully. We all know about what happened with Malcolm X. We all know about what happened with Rosa Parks, right? But the bigger issue here was when we integrated, we gave up everything we built for ourselves to become a part of the greater American society, that even though they let us in, they said, okay, you guys can work here, but you're not gonna run anything here, you're not gonna open anything here, and we're still gonna treat you as if you're not an equal. What you had is a lot of black men who couldn't get jobs, a lot of black men who didn't feel like men because they couldn't provide, so they needed to find a way to get money. And shortly thereafter, this time period, shortly thereafter, going into the 70s and the early 80s, we started to get into the crack pandemic. One of the reasons crack and cocaine became so big in the black community was because, again, at that time, we were still facing workplace discrimination. A lot of our businesses were destroyed, a lot of our communities were destroyed. We were integrating into, as Dr. King called it, which no one often talks about, but he said this, shortly before he died, we integrated into a burning house. So these men had to figure out a way to provide for themselves and provide for their families. And when crack cocaine was introduced to them, this was a way for them to make money. It's a way for them to make money despite, you know, the educational hardships that they were going through because they weren't allowed to attend traditional colleges and all these other things that were going on. They could take this rock and they could sell this rock and they could make a bunch of money. The problem is they weren't necessarily told about the detrimental effects that this was going to have in the community. I mean, this pandemic, when the war on drugs, was eventually evolved into the war on drugs in the 90s, but it came from the crack pandemic that hit at the time period that I was just telling you guys that. So we have these men out here, they get money by any means, trying to take care of their family, but the way that they're doing it, one, they're poisoning their own community. A lot of kids, even today, one of which we're gonna have on a documentary, these women were incapable of taking care of a child, let alone taking care of or sustaining a relationship with a man.
It's a loaded question. Coming up for me, my life as an adolescent was relatively tough. I didn't have my father. I didn't meet him until I was 20 years old, and I was already in college, setting my ways, if you will. My mother, she was a drug addict at the time, and her drug of choice was crack cocaine. So, you know, one story in particular that like solidified enough was enough for me was when I was working for this company called John Labor Care Under the Table. And, you know, it was shoveling snow, and it was like this massive blizzard when I was living in Waterbury, Connecticut. And I was out there from 5 p.m. to probably like 4 p.m. the next day, 3 p.m. the next day. And when I came home, my mom had breakfast. This is when I ate pork, so she had, bacon, sausage, eggs, I mean the works. And she tells me go take a shower, I get out, and I'm already crushing because I'm hungry. I've been out there for almost 10 hours. And her food is sitting there, and it's like, oh snap, her food's getting cold, so I make my way to her room to tell her, hey, Ma, your food's getting cold. And she wasn't in the room. Immediately, I knew what it was. So I go run into my room, and where I hid my money was, she had already taken it. Now, I was saving my money. At the time, I wanted a PlayStation, so I was saving my money to get a PlayStation and television. So I worked hard for it, and it meant a lot to me. And at that moment, you know, that was a trigger for me saying enough is enough, because I mean, I got stories for days, but as an adolescent who actually worked for something, that triggered me to say this was enough and I had to move on. And those are the type of things that I had to deal with. My mom would buy school clothes. I'll have fresh clothes for like 2 days, come home one day from school, all my clothes are gone. It was so bad to the point that one of my best friends, Mike Scott, his mother, Aunt Teresa, shout out to Aunt Teresa, we went to the store and she picked out these shoes and she said, you think Mike will like these? And I'm like, yeah, he like it, but he already got a whole bunch of shoes. He gonna run through them shoes anyway. You always get him shoes, like just, you know, joking with her or whatnot. And then she brought the shoes. And we get back to the house, and she said, son, these are your shoes, but they stay at my house. So I would go to school. I would go to her house first, put the shoes on, go to school. Then after school, I would come back and drop them off, just to keep my clothes.
One of the craziest things that happened to me as a result of what took place when I was younger was my mother. She was like behind real bad on like her bills and whatnot. So we were about to get evicted out of the house. So my mother thought it was a good idea to have me go lay in the ditch that was like behind the house. And she said, count, I don't know, just for argument's sake, I'll say 100. Count to 100, and once you get there, just start screaming on the top of your lungs for help. So I followed her instructions, and what happened was she told the people that I was kidnapped, and then she had me create this story of a person who kidnapped me just so that she can keep us in the house a little bit longer.
And my little cousin Genesis, a lot of people thought that she was my child because I would take care of her every day. So my mom, she would go on these 2-3 week binges. I still had to go to school. I still had to go to football practice. Genesis still had to go to school. So I would get up in the morning, twist her hair up, get her looking good, take her off to school, walking her to school because I didn't have a car, walk her to school. Then I would catch my bus to get to school. Sometimes I would miss my bus, so I would have to walk to school, which is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And then I would have to walk back from football practice to make sure I got to her to pick her up because, my mother wasn't there. So I didn't have the opportunity to be young. And that is what really made my childhood tough because in my mind, I didn't have a mother or a father. It was just me and Genesis. So the relationship I had with Genesis, I was upset, to be honest. I was bitter because, while my friends were going hanging out, I'm taking care of someone else's child when my mother was supposed to take on that responsibility. But I fell in love with Genesis at the same time, so I'm sitting here doing her hair and, getting her type of school, and everybody was like, oh, your daughter, she's so beautiful. I'm like, she's not my daughter, it's my little cousin.
So then the war on drugs hits in the 90s, and this was another big backbreaker to the black community. Because once the war on drugs hit in the 90s and the 3 strike rules, a lot of black men were getting locked up. It didn't even have to be crack, it could have been weed, which if you guys are aware now is pretty much becoming illegal amongst the whole world. There are so many black men who've been in jail for decades over weed charges, crack charges. And these guys were literally just trying to make a way for their family. So these black men were in prison before they were given the fair opportunity to take care of these children. Now going back to what I said before, right? You had a select amount of black women who didn't want to live off of the government money. They didn't want to get the men off of their cribs, but because we were integrated into a burning house, their next best bet at a provider was the drug lord, was the bad boy. And if you look at culture today, we're still praising that image in rap music and movies and just pop culture in the black community in general. We're still praising the image of that bad boy, that drug dealer, that's your provider, that's what the image of a real man is. When in reality, that's an effect of the racial segregation that still happened after the Great Society Acts were passed. It got to a point where it degraded so bad where a lot of black men were either dead, in jail, or had been to jail before the age of 24. And so with all those things combined, it started to become, I think, especially in the 90s, there was an even larger explosion of single-parent households in the 90s because of the war on drugs coming off of the crack cocaine epidemic and the fact that a lot of these mothers themselves were on said drugs. So a lot of women did at that point, if they weren't already on the getting taken care of by the government train, they jumped on it then at that point. So essentially what happened is these programs ended up having the opposite effect. When they were intended to help someone get through a hardship, they started to basically become a necessity for life. And then in some cases, the people taking advantage of these programs had a better life than a lot of the people who were working and paying the taxes that paid for these programs. And all of these things in a nutshell help lead us to where we're at now. So some of the effects that these things have, but let's talk about one effect that it has on boys. Boys born out of single parent households are 1.5 times more likely to have excess of idle time than boys who are not. For those of you who don't know what idle time is, that's defined as time that's not spent in school or working. Basically just at the house, producing, designing, or creating nothing. And the reason that number goes up is because, again, throughout pretty much all time, it's always kind of been relied upon the man to provide that monetarily or even food sources, because we used to hunt and things of that nature back in the day, but it's always been looked at as something for a man to provide. So when you take the man out of the household, a lot of times what's happening to these little boys is no one's teaching them the value of or the honor in taking care of or being able to provide for not just yourself but for your family. They don't see the honor in that necessarily anymore, and because as a result of that, they're spending a lot of time with no real direction, no real purpose, or not even actually formulating plans. Little girls born of single parents are 2.5 times as likely to become single parents themselves. And when I think of that statistic, it always reminds me of something that I heard when I was watching Divorce Court. Miss Jocelyn Torres, she's on Divorce Court, and she has spoke about how oftentimes you can tell a kid everything you want to, but kids, they're like sponges and they repeat what they see. So what happens oftentimes is, I'm growing up in a single parent household, right? I'm a young woman, I'm growing up in a single parent household. So I don't see a man. So psychologically, right? We go back to the Oedipus Rex syndrome, and you guys can look this up. It's a psychological theory that basically says we formulate our opinions on the opposite sex based upon our parents. So if these girls, if 30% of the entire American population has no male figure around, how exactly are they supposed to formulate what a man is and what he's supposed to do and what he's not supposed to do or how he's supposed to treat them? Essentially, they're going out when they become a puberty age, when they become prepubescent, and they're going out like a chicken with his head cut off. They have absolutely no idea what to expect, how to obtain it, how to control it, or what it should look like. Also, there's obviously always a lot of emotion in these situations. A lot of these mothers feel shame. A lot of them feel shame because some of them have more than one baby father, or some of them just never seen themselves in the situation, right? So what a lot of them will do is sometimes they'll lie. They'll say, well, your dad just didn't want to be a part of the situation, or, you know, your dad's dead, or he ran away, or whatever the case may be, and that can create a resentment in the woman towards the male sex in general.
The relationship between my mother, I don't have a relationship with her right now. And with my father, I actually have a great relationship. Well, the one that, my biological father, I have a great relationship with him. And I also have a great relationship with my stepfather, the one who raised me when I was 2.
So when you met your dad, your biological dad, at 16, what was that experience like for you? Like,
I met him, well, first he found me on Facebook. Well, his mother found me on Facebook, and then right before I went to see him, she actually passed away. And she was looking for me apparently for years. Like, one of the reasons why I don't really talk to my mom is partially because of my father not being in the picture, and it's because, you know, she kind of just left. She was in a marriage, and she kind of had me while she was in that marriage, and then she ran away because it was an abusive relationship, and she didn't want to get, you know, she didn't want me to get hurt or her to get hurt. So I could understand in a sense why she left that relationship, to protect herself and me. But then at the same time, it's just like, what about him? Because it's just like, I hear stories of her and her story, and then I hear his story, and then it's just like, it doesn't add up. But yeah.
Very interesting story. So I was actually with my boy Mark when I got the phone call when I was down in Virginia going to school, and got a call saying, you know, hey, you know, I'm your dad, yada yada yada. You know, we want you to come meet the family. I'm like, my dad? You know, my dad is dead. And when I said it's your biological father, and you know, I listened to him, and the family, they wanted me to come up to Maryland to meet them. So I talked to all my friends. You know, these brothers, we've been together since 2006, 2007. And those are my best friends, so like when I get married, they're gonna be in the wedding, all 15 of them. We was all sitting down talking over some Bojangles, and they was like, Sir Patrick, he reached out. Hear what he got to say. I was like, nah, man, I'm 20 years old. You should have been came and got me. All the stuff I had to go through with that woman, you couldn't have come and get me? Nah, so I'm just like super, super bitter. And it was like, bro, give him the opportunity. Life is too short. That was Mark told me. So we get there. I get to Baltimore, BWI, and I see these two dudes. I'm like, they was like, yo, Sir Patrick? I'm like, yeah. And it was Dylan and my little brother, my baby brother Lawrence. And it was like, yo, we your brothers. I was like, oh, all right. So we dap each other up. And then I get outside and I see this little man, about 5'5", bro. Maybe 5, I give him 5'6". He just embraced me and started crying and stuff. I'm sitting here like, okay, like, because I was really standoff at that point. So spent time with the family and spoke to my dad, and he's very short on words. Like he has a term that irritates my flesh. If you ask him a serious question, he'll be like, who knew? Say it's who knew. But you gotta know how to work him into a conversation, because he likes to explain or answer questions through stories, which I had to learn from my brother Dylan. And we went through that, and I was fortunate enough to spend time with my brothers, but then my stepmother had told me the way that she found out about me was that she found my birth certificate in a bag of rice. So she assumed that my father, as he was looking for me, he got nervous, stuffed in the bag of rice because he heard her walk through the door. Now, I'm of Nigerian descent. We eat a lot of rice. So they didn't get that rice, especially if she trying to make some jello, right? So she forgot about it. She pulls it up on him. He says, well, that's my son. I'm looking for him. And the one that got the phone call was my baby brother, Lawrence, because he's a junior. So he has my father's full name. So when they called him, and they said, can I speak to Mr. Ewell? Like, which one? Lawrence. He was like, that's me. He said, well, we find your son. He was like, I don't got no son. He was like, sir, we've been looking for your son for the past 4 or 5 months. We got you. We found your son. He was like, all right, let me write down the information. So he writes down the information. He pulls up my siblings, and then my siblings pulled up my father and my stepmother. Obviously wanted to ask, we got a brother out there. We need to go find him. And that is how I initially met my brothers and my sisters, through actually my little brother picking up the phone, answering the call. So it was a very unique situation, if you will.
Also, the opposite effect, there's also bitterness that comes into that. And I thought it was going to go this way, but it didn't. So I constantly feed, or I've had all these negative experiences with men, so I constantly feed this negative image of men into my daughter's head. I feed this, guys aren't this and guys aren't that, and they're abusive and you don't need them and all these things, right? I feed that into her head. So before this little girl gets a chance to formulate her own opinion on the opposite sex, she's been being told negative things about said opposite sex before she was even cognitively ready to look at them in a sexual, in a mating, or a family manner. All right, so let's look at this deeper. Let's go back to the monetary values of these things, right? So the average black woman makes $31,000 a year. The average black man makes $41,000 a year, okay? Now, we know the poverty line is $35,000 a year. So if the average black woman only makes $31,000 a year, that means the average black household is living in poverty by default. Even if the average black household was living with the average highest bread earner, which would be the men, it would still only be $6,000 above what the median average is. As a whole, as an entire black community, going back to the numbers I gave you earlier, we only average 40,000, right? Now here's where these numbers start to get extremely interesting, because the average median income for a married black family is $74,000. That means the average married American black family has over $35,000 in liquid income, more than the single black mother would have on her own. But let's just not look at black families, let's look at all families, okay? The average median income for all women in the country, right, as of 2017 was $36,959, okay? The average median income for men in the country was $50,000. So again, any female-led households, statistically speaking, are going to be living in poverty. They're going to be at or below the poverty line, right? But let's look at the median income for married families of all races. $88,000. That means of all races, over $40,000 extra dollars of liquid money becomes available just for there being 2 people in the household. We can talk about education as well as children, and this is gender neutral. Children born of single parent households are 2.5 times more likely to drop out of school than children who have both their parents as well. Let's take a little deeper look. Let's start to look into what it's really like when you're growing up in these situations or when you're living in these situations, because that's what this documentary is really about.
I am Cornisha Parks. I am originally from Syracuse, New York, but I was raised in New Jersey, and I have a almost 9-year-old son.
How you doing, guys? My name is Jordan. I am a owner and host of Culture Media and an Instagram at cul.ture.media. So do music. I go by the name of Zenora Ire, and you can follow me on Instagram at big_poppy_Ire.
All right, so can you explain to us what the relationship is with your father?
So basically, my father was in my life for about the first 2 years, and then after that, I haven't really heard much from him. He definitely tries to update on like health concerns, but that's he tried to make amends or try to be in my life a little while for maybe like a month or 2 when I was 21. But after that, I really haven't heard much from him. I definitely think that a lot of the questions I had pertaining to manhood or just little things like learning how to tie a tie or whatever the case is, I had my uncles around for that, but it would have been nice to have my father there. I watched my uncle raise my cousin. We were all very close in our household, so I watched them, their relationship, and sometimes I got a little jealous. I feel like, I wish my dad was around, but I feel like there would have been a couple answers I could have had answered, or there could have been, a different dynamic all the way around. I could have turned out to be a different person, Whether that may be good or bad, I just feel like little aspects of life could be different. The way I looked at manhood and the way I viewed things might have been different had he been around.
So can you describe your relationship with your father for us?
I didn't really have a relationship with my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 14. I used to pretend like that he looked like I would pretend that he looked like me, like I looked like him, or I would try to like visualize what he looked like, but I couldn't remember having a relationship with my dad until I met him at 14. When I met him, I think I psyched myself out because he was like the complete opposite of what I had hoped for. I had hoped for him to be like, I didn't expect him to be like wholesome or like this dad that was gonna sweep me off my feet and just be everything I wanted or like everything I dreamt of. I knew he was human. I knew he was, I know he made mistakes. I also understood that I had a lot of siblings, and I understood once I met him, I understood the whole dynamic. Even though I was only 14, I understood that it would have been impossible for him to be there for me the way that I would have wanted him to be. Many other siblings, and they have separate moms, and we weren't all raised together, and it doesn't bother me like how it used to. I will not lie and say that I wasn't disappointed when I met him, just because I had hoped for better. I had hoped for like a different type of relationship and a different type of bond to be created, because I was so open for that. Like I would have been a daddy's girl if I had my dad my whole entire life. I could totally see myself just being like up under him all the time. I will say that I was comfortable enough when I first met him to call him dad. I didn't like refer to him as his first name or anything like that. I literally, the first time I saw him, I was like, "Hi, daddy!" Like, I was so elated. I was just excited to meet him, but we don't have a relationship.
There's not too many people now in this era where they have the same mom and the same dad. It's all half sisters. Even all my siblings, I have all half brothers and sisters. I don't have nobody from the same mom and the same dad that are like my sister. But they're still family, so it just kind of flowed pretty much. As far as like my siblings on my father's side, it was like adjusting. They was like, "Oh, who are you?" And then like my sister went from being the only girl to like oh, who is this girl? Even though she had a sister that her father, my father actually raised, but it wasn't really his biological. They kind of called him father. So it was an adjustment. But as far as like my siblings on my mom's side, like I knew them since they were born, since they was babies. So it's like we adjusted perfectly fine. Now my older brothers from my mom's first marriage, they, you know what I'm saying, they were mad at me for a long time because of my mom. Like they didn't really talk to me a lot. And then as they got older, I guess, and they matured a little bit, they kind of just was like, oh, they call me sis and all that stuff. So our relationship was the most rocky because it was like my mom left them and they kind of took it out on me, like, why would she leave them? And then, you know, but it had a lot to do with their father filling their heads up with different stuff. And I mean, I don't blame them for feeling how they feel towards her because it's starting to take a toll on me as far as me being an adult now. And then she's doing it. My mom is like a mind game type person, so that's why we don't get along. But as far as my siblings though, my relationship with all my siblings to this day, I have a great relationship with them. So yeah, we actually came a long way, surprisingly. Like me and my sister fought the first summer that we met. Like we toe to toe, hit her with a remote, broke her glasses type, yeah. So that was definitely something for us. Like it was different.
So, Mr. Jackson, can you tell us about the relationship you had with your father?
So my dad, he was in the house until I was 6. So essentially the relationship I had with him was pretty much over the phone. Every now and again I would see him here and there, but we didn't really have like a genuine relationship. It started off with, you know, me just yearning for any attention from my dad, not really understanding why he wasn't there. And that morphing, and then I grew up and matured, and that morphed into realizing his shortcomings. So then I went through my resentment phase, and I went through just a lot of different emotions, but essentially there's never been like a real strong relationship. And so now we're just to the place where we have like a surface level, how's it going, how's everything doing kind of thing. You know your family, but you're not really family type thing.
There's a little bit of resentment towards him because of you guys' relationship. Can you elaborate on that for us a little bit?
So the first part of it was the typical, like, why aren't you here? Why did you leave? That whole situation. I just didn't really understand because there was a lot of things I had to figure out along the way. One mainly being, his drug addiction and things from his past and all that good stuff. But I really said the resentment just kind of lied in the fact that I just seen my mom working hard all the time to support me and my sisters and my great aunt and herself. And I just thought it was really unfair that, he could just drop the ball and work on whatever he had to work on. I'm sure my mom had things she had to deal with, but she dealt with it while still being present. And then I juxtaposed that with other relationships that I saw around me. I had a close friend in the neighborhood whose dad was there. Even my sister, her dad was around, and he brought me around to things naturally, but I always knew that to be her dad. So the fact that I saw examples of good fathers throughout whatever BS they were dealing with. So that's where the resentment from my father just led. I didn't really understand addiction. I didn't really understand all that stuff. But even once I understood addiction, actually, I still have resentment because I know people who had drug addictions to the severest extent, but still were able to come back and do what they had to do for their family. So I never act like I understand what that is, but that's just where my resentment was. Just feeling like, he wasn't stepping up how he could.
Very good question. I honestly believe that I probably wouldn't be sitting having this conversation with you, hands down. So in the Nigerian culture, whenever you have a child, the woman doesn't take the child. The child goes to the father's compound. That's his responsibility. Only in America, no pun intended, can a man lose his right as a father off gate until he goes to court. So being in that situation, my father, he's never done any drugs. He's had Heineken from time to time, whatever, but he's never been a hard drinker, no drugs, straight, narrow guy. Whereas I was forced into an environment where drugs was around me all the time. So I'm a firm believer that you allow people to do things. I allowed my relationship with my mother to dictate my relationship with other women. For example, there was multiple occasions that I felt that my mother did not care or love me as I deserved, and those things like echoed, throughout my life. So my mindset was, if your mother can't love you, nobody can love you, and I treated women as such. I was one of those guys who thought that, how many women you have with you shows your manhood, because I didn't know what it was to be a man. I wasn't groomed to be a husband. I wasn't groomed to be a father. I was just running wild because I had no leadership, no guidance. And because of that, my present with my children's mother, that relationship suffered, because it was some areas where we both could contribute, but I want to say I'll take the blame in a lot of cases, because I did not know what it was to properly take care of a woman. So we suffered in certain spaces that was unnecessary. I make the joke all the time, but I'm so serious, and I say, Dylan, you the little big brother. And the reason why I say that is because the way he values himself, the way he values people around him, I admire that. And I want to say within the last 2 years, I have really been focusing on being a better man so that I can be a better businessman. But I've been also taking, some recipes out of Dylan's book, if you will, on just how to be a good person altogether. Now I'm in a stage where I'm not really concerned about, excuse my language, the body count. I'm concerned about what can you do to help me build a better life for myself and for my children. I'm looking to build and be with a wife, not just have a girlfriend. And when I had that relationship with my mother, which unfortunately I had to sever at one point, it hindered me moving forward with women altogether on a serious level. The moment I felt the emotion of me catching a feeling, I'll cut them off. The moment that they gave me attitude or said something smart, I'll cut them off. I would never have the patience. My children's mother got the most out of me because we both came from similar backgrounds, so we understood each other. But because of that foundation that we both had, it actually hindered our relationship. So to the point that the communication was absolutely terrible. We was toxic in a lot of spaces, but we knew we loved each other, which was the crazy thing. It was just that we both were not groomed to be relationship people. And that while we was in the relationship, we was learning how to be relationship people, which made it which made it tough. So when you add children to the mix, when you add bills, when you add entrepreneurship, that's a recipe for disaster when you don't have a foundation. And I bring it all back to not having my mother and my father in my life as a child. Now, is that an excuse? Absolutely not. Once you're an adult, you have full control over your feelings and how you control and move around in your life. That's why now I understand, how to properly take care of a woman to a certain degree. I'm still learning. But I feel more confident now that I can take care of a woman and be a husband than I did literally a year ago or 2 years ago, because I didn't have it. I didn't have the mindset to do it. So the relationship with my mother definitely contributed to the poor relationships I had moving forward with women.
For a unique perspective to this documentary based upon the fact that for a time period you were a single mother yourself. Describe that experience, because I feel like a lot of people have like perceptions of the experience, but what was that actually like going through that for a time period in your life as a woman?
It wasn't the worst experience in the world, but it wasn't easy. I will say that I had the luxury of having a specific type of support system, but I had to set that support system up for myself. It wasn't something that I just automatically had. I had to put a lot of pride to the side, a lot of ego away. I had to be selfless, which is what you ultimately have to be once you become a parent, once you become especially a mother. And I had a son, and I always knew, like, once I found out that I was having a boy, my number one thing for him was to be able to be different than all of the men in my family. I wanted to provide him with a male figure that could teach him how to be a man, because I ultimately knew that I wouldn't be able to. But like when you grow up and you see a bunch of women raising children on their own, multiple children by multiple different men and everything, and they say it's hard. They say it like, you know, they say, well, it's not easy or it's hard, but they also turn around and say, but you got this. You can do this. You're strong. You can make it work.
Can you describe your relationship with your father with us? Like, where do you think he impacted you the most in your life?
I wouldn't necessarily say my biological father impacted me because I met him when I was 16. But as far as my stepfather, he raised me to be the woman I am today. You know, as far as taking care of my household and making sure my kids are in order and my family's in order and stuff.
All right, so about your family life, can you tell us a little bit about how it was for you growing up?
About my family. My family is very interesting for many reasons, because we're not just your typical Black African American family. My parents were born and raised in Nigeria. So when they came to this country in the mid-'80s, started churning babies, if you will, it was this paradigm of being raised as an African by Africans in America. It's very interesting. So a lot of the culture was very new to my parents. My parents didn't, well, my father especially didn't grow up the wealthiest. So when he came here, you know, going to school at Howard, you know, shout out to HBCUs, he picked up some American culture, but not a lot. So when they were raising us and we were all born here in America, it's like we're going to school with people who are all American, African American at that. So the culture he's raising and the culture we're picking up are kind of colliding and conflicting. So it was very interesting, like trying to teach my parents things that are so typical to the regular American person because they grew up here or whatever, things that are not really in his culture or whatever. Oh, I need a bike for my birthday. That was what they were doing back in Nigeria. But other than that, like it was an interesting cultural dynamic because it's like outside of the house, I was an African American, but in the house, I was literally just an African.
I know the next thing is going to be, well, what if we're not married or what if we're just living together? Well, I looked up the numbers on you guys too. Let's just stick with the Black community since we have the highest number of non-married people in general. In the Black community, 8% of us are listed as cohabitants. That means you've been living together for 7 or more years and you're just unmarried. So let's add that 8% to the number that we have left after we take away the 68%. That would essentially mean that less than 30% of us were married. Less than 10% of us are cohabitating. I really want you guys to sit on that because that's always the next thing. Well, you don't have to get married to be together. Well, the problem is nothing's replacing the system of marriage because people aren't cohabitating either. The reality is we're living in a hookup culture. And people are just moving from one person to the next person to the next. Everybody's about their career and want to live their best lives. And that's all fine and dandy. But when you don't replace a system, right? Because the family system was to assure not just the long-term survival of the parents, but the children. So when you're allowing people to just have these kids and we're not replacing any type of system to take care of these kids, right? And women have rights now. So when people are breaking down what they expect the average household to have, you guys got to realize when the country is deciding what they want to charge for food or what they want to charge for gas or what they want to charge for rent, they're going off of combined incomes. The reason they're going off of combined incomes is because women work now. The women rights movement, women work now. So they're assuming if there's a child, both of you are together. So they're basing their numbers assuming you guys have $88,000. You want to know why everything's so expensive now? Because everyone, for the most part, not literally, but a large conglomerate, especially of us, and by us I mean my people, African Americans, we're not together. So when the country's set up assuming that you have at least about $80,000 in disposable income, when in reality you only have 40, yeah, you're fighting an uphill battle. I was about 8. So Dad moved down to Georgia, and it's funny because this always sticks out to me. I remember one time he came back. I want want to say about 2 years later, I think I was around 10. So he comes back and he says to my mom that he wants me for the weekend. And I'm ecstatic. I'm like, oh yeah, this is dad, we about to be cool, we about to be shooting hoops, playing the game, all this stuff. And my mom kind of knew it wasn't going to go the way that I thought it was going to go. But I always love and appreciate my mom for allowing me to learn this lesson on my own instead of doing what a lot of single mothers do and telling me how my dad wasn't this or my dad wasn't that and causing me to have resentment towards my dad that would eventually turn into resentment towards her because I would eventually grow up and feel like, because a lot of black men grow up, they hear men aren't this, men aren't that, men aren't that, or whatever, and they grow up and they have a certain amount of resentment towards their mothers for not just allowing them to find it out, or they talk to their dads and their dads present a different story that makes their mother look bad, right? My mother didn't either. She said, okay, you can go with your father. So I go with my dad, and he spends the entire time chasing other women. I mean, when we go from one woman's house, he spends most of the time with this woman, and I'm in the room with her kids, who I don't know, I've never met them, but in my head, I'm with my dad and I'm with kids, so I'm happy. And once he's done with her, we go into lo and below, guess what? Yep, that's right, another woman's house. So we go to another woman's house, and when we go to that other woman's house, I'm in the basement, and, he's upstairs with the woman. It was at that point, even at 10 years old, where it hit me, and I said, this man didn't come back here to visit me. He came back here to sort more oats, basically create more children, start even more broken homes. And I didn't think that deeply, of course, at 10. But I thought, he's not here for me. I remember calling my mom, and I asked her if she could come get me. And she came, and she got me. And it was like, from that moment, my respect level for my mom was shot through the roof here. And my respect level for my dad kind of went all the way down here. But it was like, from that moment, it taught me a lot. Because I knew I was never going to be that type of dad. And I knew that the first thing I was going to teach my son is to never be that type of man. It's such a big problem with the hookup culture with men in general, going back to why I said that's one of the biggest things that I would teach my son is you don't have to sleep with all these women to be a man. Like, you think about someone like Future, and I'm a fan of the music and things of that nature, but you have a man who's literally, this guy started family with 6 to 7 different women at this point. And going back to what I said earlier, there's no way these kids are going to be able to properly hang around each other. There's no way you're going to be able to be a permanent fixture in these kids' lives, right? So they're going to have someone they had never met, they probably never hung with, or they barely even know, and you're okay with all of this as a man. It just doesn't make sense to me. If you want to have a big family, what do you need 8 different women to do it for? And this is a huge problem because statistically speaking, twice as many black women have children as black men. So even though we have this gigantic single parent outrage going on in our communities, or problem going on in our communities, what's an even bigger issue is it's a select number of men who are knocking up all these women. It's not even all black men doing this. And if you look across all races, it's still the same thing. You'll still find across all races, right, that there are more women who have kids than men, because all women kind of typically chase the highest man that they can get. And then what happens is the highest man, because he can get any woman, he typically never settles down. So he sleeps with all of them, right? Condom or no condom. He knocks them all up, and he just pays them child support so he can keep sleeping with them. But then it becomes men aren't this or men aren't that, when in reality, it's really 10% of men knocking up, honestly, about probably 60-70% of women. I mean, you guys... All right, so I want to go in deeper on this whole Future thing, okay? Right now, displaying on the screen is a bunch of memes that were posted by men in regards to Future when yet another baby mother popped up. And his quote, after he denied it being his baby, and it was found out that it was, his quote was, she was ugly anyway, it was supposed to be a one-night thing, right? At that point, on a personal level, like I said, music is one thing. I separate the person from the music. But on a personal level, no one should be rocking with this man, not only because there's clearly something sexually wrong with him. He's clearly a sexual deviant. This is a fact. Anyone who starts that many families, something's wrong with them. They're overcompensating for something, or something's mentally off, right? But that's neither here nor there. We talked about the 90-10 rule, right? How 90% of women chase after the 10% men, the athletes, the rappers, the actors, the guys who run their own business, the millionaires, the tall, dark, and handsomes, the chads, whatever the hell you want to call them, right? But look at what I'm displaying on the screen. This is men promoting these dudes. This is men looking up to these dudes. This is men talking about Future like he's some kind of Rhodes Scholar or a rocket scientist. They're not talking about Joshua Dobbs, who is actually a rocket scientist. They're not talking about Myron Rowe, who is actually in med school. Nope, they're talking about Future, what could Future even put on his obituary as his contribution to his community? What could he say? I fucked bitches? Because what else is he going to say? What else has he contributed in? You haven't seen him at any marches. This is a fact. He's very few to no conscious songs, and he won't settle down with one woman. So everything this man's putting out is poison, but y'all looking up to him as an alpha, as someone you want to be like. You want to get money like him so you can make a bunch of broken families and be just like this dude. So how can you blame the women for looking up to this man as an alpha when if we're calling it a spade, y'all looking up to this man as an alpha as well? And you're going to see everything going across your screen. Now, this is mainly a white male movement, but I don't care. I'm going to bring it up because it's relevant. We've been on and off talking about everybody's whole documentary. So even though it's a case study on the black community, we're still going to look at other communities. So let's look at MGTOW. MGTOW stands for Men Going Their Own Way. It's an online movement, but it's starting to get a lot of hype because it has over 1 million followers. The idea of men going their own way is basically these women only want to have sex with the highest quality men, so we're going to just not deal with women anymore. I mean, what type of loser ass shit is that? Imagine cutting off a whole sex, right? A whole sex of women because a couple of women you tried to be with didn't want to be with you. So instead of saying, well, I can't get no woman, so let me get my business right, or let me pick up more hours, or let me hit the gym more, or let me work on myself more, anything like that, you decided to make a group with over 1 million men to complain about female nature and female behaviors. This is what you guys decided to do. Let's talk about red pill dudes. Red pill dudes base themselves basically upon the ideology that you shouldn't deal with women long term because they all cheat and they'll all hurt you and hypergamy and blah, 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 blah. Basically a bunch of insecure men whining about not being able to get women if we're going to call it what we want to call it, right? But why take my word for it? So you don't have to take my word for it. So we're going to take a look at one of them right now. 100,000 subscribers on here. I want you guys to pay attention to what was said in literally the first 20 seconds. I didn't even have to look hard for this. 100,000 subscribers. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Back from the video. Thank you guys for clicking on today's video. My goal by the end of this video is to help get out any little bit of nice guy that you might have left in your system, because every time you're a nice guy to a woman, you get taken advantage of, and that's the honest to God truth. And if you're in a relationship right now and you're thinking, I'm a nice guy and I still have my female with me, continue to be a nice guy and you will be taken advantage of. All right? And that's the truth. Every time I've been a nice guy in relationships, I've been cheated on and treated like complete garbage. And I was not respected. I was not taken serious. And this is what I'm trying to tell you guys. Don't be a nice guy anymore.
Look. What did I just say? Hurt, bitter, I picked the wrong women or I can't get women, so I'm going to complain about all women now. The same as the baby mom who picked 3 futures to sleep with and complains about all men. Explained to you guys before where this shit comes from in the first 15 minutes. I told y'all where all this comes from, but let's keep moving forward because we have other issues and things to tackle. And Future is a good example of that because this is one man who has about 6 to 7 different baby mothers. Just one man. One man did this, right? And so then it becomes a, well, black men don't take care of their kids argument, when in reality it's one black man who created 8 different families and isn't a fixture in any of them. But it still reflects on me because when you see 8 different single moms, your assumption is these are 8 different men. When in reality, like I said, across all races, this is usually the same guys. I would say, and this goes from a male and female perspective across all races, we need to start shaming men who don't take care of their kids, for baby mothers, but men still look up to him and women still want to be with him. There's something wrong with someone on a sexual level who would even spread their seed like that, but there's also something wrong with someone who would want to catch it. And we have to start shaming these types of individuals in the community. We can't embrace everyone. There's no reason a deadbeat dad honestly shouldn't even have friends. As black men, if you know a man is not taking care of his kids and his family, and you can still be friends with him and hang around him and laugh and chill and vibe, or try to hook him up with another woman knowing that he's that type of man, then you're not a real man either. We have to start holding each other accountable as men. And
I think the issue is a lack of accountability. I feel like as a man, no matter your race, but specifically speaking to black men, I feel like you have to be accountable for the actions you take. If you can lay down with somebody and procreate, then you should be able to take on the responsibilities of raising that child. That's the goal of whatever encounter you had was to have children, but whether or not that's the goal, you have a child now, and that's your responsibility. I feel like as a man, you need to step up and say, hey, this is I brought somebody into the world, so this is my responsibility on taking care of them. Taking care of, but you going out every night with the boys, but the kids need Pampers. You know, it's not cool, it's not fashionable to be, you know, a dirtbag. You know what I'm saying? And then we have dudes on like larger scales. For instance, Future, who I feel like people never really call him out on it, but he's to the limelight. For what we see, he's not that great of a father. So I just feel like this energy of being a fuckboy, and he going out with you every night, but you see he got kids in the house he not taking care of. Shame works. It's unfortunate. Hey, bro, you a trash person. You need to get that together. You need to get on your shit. Pull your mans up and be like, hey, bro, like, it's not cool. Because at the end of the day, it's not. And we suffer from it in the long run.
What I think is causing a lot of family disruption as pertains to African Americans in this country is it's kind of like a lack of a goal and a mission. It's funny, my parents were very, very adamant on making it clear that you are a Nigerian. Don't let no one tell you that you're an American. And it wasn't really to dispel the idea that, you know, being American is bad, but it was to continue to promote that being an African is good. Because, you know, in this country, a lot of Africans come to this country and want to dispel who they are. So my parents were very, you know, adamant on keeping us, you know, fixed in our cultural heritage, our beliefs, because those things will keep you going for the rest of your life.
All right, so as a married woman yourself, what do you think that family dynamic, you and your husband being together and you guys having kids, how do you think that's going to impact the kids to be able to see that?
I think it's always good for the kids to see the mother and the father in the picture, which is why I hold on to our relationship and continue to keep holding on. But I mean, I just don't want them to grow up and be in a household like how I grew up, even though like it wasn't all so bad having like a stepfather or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't want them to witness that, because I know meeting my father when I was 16 and then to still be told that he may not be my father or being thrown around and stuff like that. I don't want them to go through that. So
not having my father in my life, I had no respect for women whatsoever. I didn't know how to properly communicate, and I definitely did not care about how they felt about me or how they saw me. Whereas my father, and it's a part of his culture, of his upbringing, of having his father and his mother in his life as a child, your image and your name is all you have. So you just run around here chasing these females, you know, like in my Instagram, I had to change it completely because I had pictures of me picking women up and all this other nonsense. It's like stupid stuff. And then my father, he was just said to me, he was like, you know, son, like, I understand that your situation is unique, for lack of better words, but, you know, always just show respect. That's all you gotta do. If you show respect, it's easy. It's like the cliche, you'll catch more flies with honey than vinegar, you know? Or excuse me, bees, one of those things. But honey's always good. But my father not being there, even though he wanted to be there, definitely shifted my life in a direction that I'm not happy about, but I appreciate. And the reason why I say I appreciate is because I became what a friend of mine calls social incongruent. Social incongruent means you had the luxury of jumping social classes and being able to move around. So I went from Section 8 housing where the rent was like $15 a month, food stamps that look like Monopoly money, not the cool little EBT cards that they got now, right? And then migrating from that to being on $1 million boat with one of my friends, and his like great-great-grandfather created a toothpick. So like I go from roach-infested housing to a boat. Unheard of, you know. I've graduated, not to be tooting my own horn, but I'm extremely proud of myself. Graduated college when I was told by my mother's girlfriend at the time, You'll never go to college, you'll never graduate college, you'll never play football. You have a piss poor attitude, which I did have a piss poor attitude. But she told me I would never accomplish these things. Not only did I graduate college, now I did have a 2.3 GPA in my undergrad, but I graduated my master's program with a 3.3 GPA. Going into going into college on the 3rd grade reading level. So yes, I toot my own horn because as an adult, I forced myself to be better. Now with my son, I try my best to properly educate him in a way that he learn as he can learn, because he's only 2. But with my daughter, I make sure we open the door, we let her walk in the door first, or when we took them out the Cheesecake Factory for her birthday, we let her sit down first and let her order first. Just little things like that so my son can see it. And then for my children's mother, make sure I'm being respectful to her. I never saw how to properly interact with a woman. My interaction was BET Uncut. And if you remember what BET Uncut is, you get it. My interaction, and then the Bill Cosby Show, which was an interaction like Family Matters and stuff. But other than that, I didn't know what it was. So now that I made some mistakes, some character building experiences in my past relationship with my children's mother, I'm taking those lessons and I'm going to build them within myself to make me a better man, so that in the event I do decide to have another relationship, I can be strong and well in it. And then in addition to that, so that my kids can see how you're supposed to interact with the opposite sex appropriately, opposed to just thinking you can run wild.
Has a father figure in his life, and you have that masculine presence in your life as well. Can you give us like a description of how you think your son has changed since he's had that regular presence, and how much it's benefited you as a woman to have a male presence around to help guide you guys through life?
It makes things a lot easier. Oh my gosh, yeah. And feeling like you got it all together. But I've never been the type of woman that felt like I could do everything by myself. I've never felt like I didn't need help. I always felt like, no, it takes 2 to have a child, so I shouldn't have to do all this by myself. And it be good help, and it be genuine help, and it be loving and conditional. You can tell that it's unconditional. I think it changed my perspective on being a parent, as far as patience goes, as far as being happy and living in the moment, and decisions that I might have made in the past before I had that male presence in my life, not allowing those things to affect what I have now, and helping me like not take it for granted, because ultimately I wanted that for my son. I wanted him to have a strong male presence, someone who is mentally stable, someone who's emotionally stable, someone who is patient. His role in this is to be the leader, and by me being able to allow that person to do that, I always felt like my son deserved to have the best male figure in his life that I could provide him with. Parents that I don't know, siblings that I don't know, nieces and nephews that I don't know. And I used to think about that type of stuff a lot, because that type of stuff means stuff to me. Like the fact that I have people in this world who are related to me that will die someday and I won't care, that's a problem for me. And I didn't grow up and not know who these people are, like his grandparents and his close, his immediate relatives and stuff like that. Like it's important. It's always been important for me, for him, to know who those people were and to have a relationship with those people. It's changed in so many different ways. He didn't get this masculine energy until he was about 4, and like crybaby. I'm just gonna say what it is, because he cried so much. He would cry over everything, and I could not teach him. That I get that it's annoying and that it hurts, or you might be mad, but you can't cry over everything. And it's like, I'm a girl trying to teach a little boy that he can't cry over everything, and I cry over a lot of different things. So this crybaby kid to just toughen things out and just becoming so resilient, and just he wouldn't even jump off of things. Like he wouldn't even, like he was afraid to hurt himself. Like it was crazy. And he's just like this. He wrestles. He's so confident. And I always wanted him to have that too, because I felt like I grew up and I didn't really have the confidence that I feel that I would have had I had my dad. He's got the confidence of a grown man, and he's a little boy. So he's a great person. And I think that he would have been a great person regardless, just because of just who he is. But watching him go from being 4 to almost 9, and the person that he is, and the way that he talks, and the way that he treats people, I think that he gained from having that male, like being able to have that male figure for so long and creating a bond with that male figure. I think I would be able to handle it, or I didn't think that I would be a good mom to a daughter, because I feel the complete opposite. But just because women go through so much with dating and making decisions when it comes on to picking men, and we don't usually choose right. Like I always felt like men had, better choosing ways when it comes to picking who they're going to spend the rest of their lives with, and I would to set the standard. And it's okay to set the standard and not to allow anyone to make her feel bad about having that standard. And when I say anyone, I mean anyone, family members, friends, society, the world, because there are other women in this world who literally make women like me, the submissive women, the woman that you would call submissive in a relationship, look and feel bad and or stupid for treating their man like a man. And I would have to be submissive in some way, and I'm going to let her know that her femininity is important, and it's important for her to have that, and it's important for her to make sure that she stands by that when she starts dating and she takes it serious. Have her, talk to her about her confidence and her self-esteem. She's capable of being a great parent. She's capable of being a great spouse and a great partner, a great person to build with. I'm going to make sure that I develop her in that way.
I want to tell my daughter, well, the first thing I don't have a daughter yet, but the first thing I want to tell her is that she's beautiful, and she's beautiful because of who she is. Society can even put on to her, because just like society puts to men that their worth comes from how many women they can sleep with, society puts to women that their worth comes from how good they look physically, and that's not true. The same thing I just said to my son, I said to my daughter, your worth comes from your soul, your spirit, who you are as a person, how you help the people around you, how they feel when they talk to you. Are they feeling lifted? Do they feel higher? Do they feel good from having to speak with you or being around your presence? How well do you nurture your kids? How well do you tend to your men? How well do you keep up with your family? All those things are things that come down later, but initially, until you have a husband, again, similar to what I told my son, your womanhood is not defined by a man until you find your twin flame. Which, if you don't, then it's just defined by you, who you are. One of the biggest things I would tell my daughter is, I'm like, you sit every day on something that delivers life to this world. The world could not continue to exist without you. Okay, because we only need one man. One man could impregnate 1,000 women, right? But we would need 1,000 women, because one woman might die giving birth, and then the entire race is done. But if we have one man and 2,000 women, we can carry on. And I would tell my daughter, especially with her being black, her being the descendant of the original people of this planet, you are sitting on a gateway to life, to existence. Why would you want to open that gateway for someone just because they're attractive, or just because they're popular, or whatever other the reason might be? No, you open that up. You make someone earn that. You make them invest time. Yes, you make them invest some money too, because you want to make sure that y'all going to be able to build something together. But more important than that is the time. Does he enjoy being around you? Does he care about you as a person? Is he a good person? And that's what I would tell her. Don't let any man convince you that this is a fact. What you're sitting on brings life into the world. Don't let a man cheapen that by telling you, oh, everyone's doing it, or any other nonsense. You don't give that up unless there's love attached to it. You don't exchange energy with someone who doesn't love you. That's the biggest thing that I would probably tell my daughter, and count to a lot of other things that I would tell her besides loving herself, loving her hair, taking care of herself, and the things of that nature. But that's the biggest one. Do not allow society or men to pressure you into giving up your body. Your body is your most precious gift. If you talk to most women, they will tell you the biggest thing I can give to a man is a child or their body, aka sexual intercourse. But it both comes back to the same thing. That's your treasure. And women used to treat that as that. I don't know what happened now, but I would tell my daughter that's just supposed to be, that only goes to the highest men in your life. The men who meant the most to you, who did the most for you, who were there the most. That's who gets that. But absolutely no babies unless you get married. Because I would tell my daughter, listen, he don't want to commit to you for the rest of your life. What makes you think he's going to commit to your child for the rest of your life? What makes you think he's going to do that? As a matter of fact, I would tell my daughter to do the house test, or that he wants to have a child with you. I would say to her this. I would say, do you want to buy a house with me? For some reason, I guess it's the 30-year thing, people get really scared of houses. Like, most people in America would tell you, I don't want to buy a house because, I don't have my husband yet, or I don't have my wife yet, or I don't know where I want to live. Basically, I don't have things figured out. And what I would tell my daughter is, if he says he doesn't want to buy a house with you, or he's not ready, I would ask him to say why. He's probably going to say several other things I just named, and I would say to her to reply to him, that's why we're not having a child. Another big mention, if you're already in a situation where, at the end of the day, I understand things happen. Situation where it's kind of too far gone, you're already a single mom. The biggest piece of advice that I would probably give to you is to be very cautious about the next man you bring around your kids, if you bring the next man around your kids. It's probably more important for the girls because you don't know who you're bringing around your daughter. You have your daughter walk around the house and let's just call a spade a spade. There's a large number of pedophiles and rapists in this country. And a lot of women who were raped or molested as a result of there not being a man around. Statistically speaking, you are 3 times less likely to be raped or molested as a woman if your father is present in your life. 3 times less likely. So the biggest thing that I would say to single moms is be very selective. Love yourself. No, okay, whatever happened, but if I'm going to do this again, I need to do this again with a life partner because this kid's going to be here for life. So again, like I said, women are happier when they're married. Men make more money when they're married. Men live longer when they are married. And we already talked about how the massive gap between how much more money married couples have versus single couples. But I will also say to this, cohabitating, that's a thing. That's the thing. You don't believe in the institute of marriage for whatever reason. I don't really understand that. But if you don't, you can always cohabitate too. What I will say to you though, if you're going to cohabitate is to make sure that you at least write a will. But let's say you start a great career for yourself as a man, right? You get yourself to a position where you build a great living, right? You have a nice house, nice cars, you take care of your family. Your woman, she stays home with the kids because you got so much money that you can take care of everything. And your plane crashes or you get hit by a car. If you didn't marry this woman, she has no claim to any of this stuff. She has not a claim to that house. She has not a claim to those cars. She doesn't claim to anything because you didn't marry her. If the kids aren't 18, at least one of them isn't 18, they can't claim that either. So this is one example of why marriage really is a lot more important than you guys look into. But this is why I'm stressing to you that if you don't want to put the state in your business, as people would say, that's fine. But you need to cohabitate and then just create a will for your family so in the event that something happens to you, they can still access your investments, your SSI, or your house, your cars, your property, or anything else that you may have left to them without having to go through a hassle from the state.
Issues here. See, here's the thing about African American culture, at least in America, okay? So you can have somebody that, let's say, comes from a poor background and maybe they don't have a whole bunch of money and they have kids. Yes, they'll teach their kids to be great or they want their kids to do well, but it's a different dichotomy when you come from a place like Nigeria. Nigeria is, for all intents and purposes, third world. So the struggle that my parents went through, it makes sense why they came here. And a lot of Africans, when they come here, it's so different. You're coming from a land that, even though democracy reigns, it's dictatorish, if you will, where public services are not always available. There is no welfare. There is no financial aid. Teachers can strike and you end up being in school for 8 years to get a degree, whether you like it or not. So when they came here to a place that's so structured, it was like, okay, look, we were raised with this, so we have to keep that. We have to keep that structure that we got back home, but kind of slightly engage in the freedom of here or whatever. It's a knowing of self as well. Like a lot of times being in this country, African Americans, is very unfortunate, but due to what the transatlantic slave trade did, a lot of people are striving to know self, to know home, to figure out, we're raised in these communities, raised in these hoods, these neighborhoods, these cities, these towns, these suburbs, but our actual origin seems to be lost at times. So I think my parents knowing directly where they came from, where it'd be just like, yeah, I'm from here, this village, this place, this is where all our family is, it kind of gave us a sense of direction. Like we knew home, so we knew how to move forward. I think if African Americans had a deeper connection to home, many things would make sense and There are broken families in the African community as well, but what you always notice is that more often than not, their kids always excel. And that's a pressuring thing, but it's also a good thing because it's just simply based on how our parents raised us and what they push forward and what cannot be accepted.
What it really comes down to, what the issue is, it's not money, it's not even racial equality. It really comes down to education. I mean, yes, don't get me wrong. Poverty is a problem, racism is a problem. But what it comes down to, simply and fully, is education. And I don't just mean opening up the history book and knowing your algebraic equations. I'm talking about education and how to manage your money, education, the power of voting, education, the power of education. We have a lot of kids whose parents don't care, and literally, it's really just a matter of, I just need you to not be in the house for 8 hours. So that's why you got to go to school. Between that and it being illegal from not being in school. And I guarantee you, if it wasn't illegal for kids not to be in school, half the kids wouldn't be in school. And that's the problem. We went from a place where we was literally going through hell and high waters just to sit in the back of somebody's classroom, to the point where I can't get your ass to come to school if I paid you. So it's education. They have this mentality that this is my Baltimore, my Baltimore, my city. This is my cat. The best I can do is be the best rapper, the best basketball player, the best drug dealer, the best looking, the best shoes. All these small obtainable goals is all that they can dare to dream. And if they have something beyond that, they are constantly being shown why that may not be the case. And so as educators, we've been doing that. That's our main goal, is to try and combat that. But I'm not going to combat that with the hour that I see you every day compared to the other 23 that you have with all the other stuff that's going on in your life. I have kids coming to me with, literally laughing and playing. They'll come up to me and say, "Hey, Mr. Jackson, what's going on? I had a terrible weekend." "Why did you have a terrible weekend?" "Oh, my dad shot himself in the head, and we was all there, and I had to go over to my auntie's house, and it messed up my whole weekend. I couldn't play my games or nothing." That's what I live in. Where it's to the point where it's just like, this little boy's father killed himself, and he's upset because he can't continue playing his game because he's in a world where it's like he can't even deal with that trauma. He knows he's sad. He knows he's supposed to be sad, but he's not sad because literally that's how trauma works. The body's like, this is just too much shit going on, so we're going to acknowledge it, and then we're going to push that shit to the back of the head. And then when he has a family, or when he has a pressure moment or whatever, that's when it's going to come out. And that's when you have your behavioral issues. He's in middle school now, and I guarantee it's sad, but he's very likely to be one of them kids cutting up by the time he gets to high school, because he deals with bullshit after bullshit, and the adults in his life are not effectively making things better. So by 9th, 10th grade, you don't lost respect, you don't lost trust, you don't lost all that. So what it really comes down to is education, is knowing that you can have something more, because let me tell you, people in general, but black people, these black kids, they want good. They want greatness. They are not self-destructive. They just been hurt too many times. And so by the time I'm serious, it's like a twilight zone. They have all the dreams and the stars in their eyes in 7th, 8th grade. By the time you get to 9th grade, you got to pick a side. Are you going to be the square that they pick on, or are you going to be the guy picking on people? You literally have to pick a side. And so that's the only way to strive. I can't be I can't be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. So let me just be the best drug dealer, the best rapper, the best whatever. These small obtainable goals, that's what they shoot for. So it really roots down to education. Education for the kids, education for the parents.
So it's like we're distant cousins, right? And the cousin from Africa hasn't really met the cousin from America, but they both come from the same central family. So they're both missing out on different things. And that's the thing, it's the root of our tree. When a tree grows, when you look at the top of the tree, you may see all type of leaves and all type of twigs, and you may see leaves on one part, and you may go to another part and just see twigs and sticks. But it's that root that built both. So I think it's very important that we get back to our root. And it's not enough to just wear African clothes. It's not enough to just wear African names. It's bigger than that. We have to travel to the diaspora. No one talks about going to Africa for vacation. We go over Africa to go to China. We go over Africa to go to the Middle East. We go over Africa to go to Australia. But we don't stop at our homeland and smell the roses. So I would tell the young generation is to not only visit back home to make sense out of what you do. One, love everything you do. Everything that they call ghetto is not really ghetto. The way you talk, the way you act, the way you walk, there's a reason that you do that. You may not know it because it's only ghetto, in my opinion, to outside people who don't know what you represent. That's the thing about this whole being ghetto or being weird. You have to go and meet those who do what you do. You know, I'll give my example back to Greekdom. People who are in Greek organizations, they have these calls, they have these incantations that they say to each other. To anybody who's not in the organization, it's weird, it's strange. But if you're in it and you understand it, it's like my brother, my sister, I understand that call. It's the same thing. So the things that the world has told you is ghetto, it's not. You just need to go and meet your brothers and sisters who understand that call. So I would very much advise the next generation to stick with your people, stay with your people. If one group of your people seem difficult to deal with, there are so many subsets of Black in so many ways. Go find another one. Just don't leave your family, because the truth of the matter is, if we actually want to grow, if we actually want to be able to build communities of greatness, communities of success, we have to be able to do that. And like I said, the Jewish, I use them as an example because they're very organized, wealthy people who came to this country with disparity. But what led them, people look at the money, it's not about the money. Money doesn't matter. I can give Black people $1 trillion, and if we're not united, that money will all go into separate pots. So the thing about the Jewish and the Asian communities, they made sure that this is how we represent. We build within. We need work done, we do work within. That builds community, that builds strength. So I would tell the next generation, work with your own if you truly want to be strong, if you truly want to bring in a stronger community. And if you don't like what you see in your community, if you hate how there's so much drugs and disparity and try to fix it by working with your own, because that's the only way it'll get fixed.
So as this becomes a bigger world problem, we see this is spreading to Britain, this is spreading to Japan, and it's also spreading across other races in America. And people say, well, you don't need a man, Well, look at our community. The Black community is literally a matriarchy, okay? There are more Black women than there are Black men. Black women are more educated than the Black man is. Black women are running the households, they're raising the kids. If you look at the Black community right now, as we speak, as this is being filmed, there's turmoil going on in the country right now amongst African Americans as this is being filmed on all types of different levels, okay? Economically, we're behind. Educationally, we're behind. We're just behind on so many different levels. So for those of you who this has not become a pandemic in your community yet, right? So you're in Africa or you're in the Caribbean or wherever you're at, you're in Europe, you're wherever you're at, right? And this has not become a pandemic yet. If you want to know what it's going to look like, if it does, you can look at the Black community in America. And you can look at how they're at the bottom of everything. And that's what happens when you have a matriarchy. Guys, men and women were put here together for a reason. We're here to complement each other. We're here to help each other. We're here so that we can balance out what the other person lacks. We're not here to compete with each other, and we're damn sure not here to hate each other. That's not the way that it is designed.
All right, guys, so as we wrap up, so I'm going to give you a little bit of tidbits about the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Now, I want you guys to look this up for yourselves, okay, and look into it more yourselves. But I'm just going to give you more of a breakdown about the divine masculine and the divine feminine and what I mean by we really are brought here to support each other and help each other out and not compete and not be angry. Men discarding women won't work. Women discarding men won't work. But before we talk about that, as you know right now, like I said, if you're looking at right now as we're filming this, there's a lot of turmoil going on in the country right now. You have people protesting for Black lives right now, protesting against police brutality. Trying to take down patriarchy is a big thing going on right now, LGBTQ rights. So there's just a lot of change happening. The earth is shifting. Then things are not going to be the same as they were. You don't want to be left on the wrong side. But this is what happens when you think masculinity is toxic or there's no balance between the femininity and the
masculinity, okay? This is the type of stuff that happens. I want you to look at these two girls. What are they doing? What are these two girls doing? What are they doing? Why are they just dancing? What are you progressing by dancing? What's behind it? Is it even a sentimental dance? Did the dance mean anything? Look at these dudes over here. Look at these dudes going hard. Look at these dudes. But again, what's the point? What's the point? Is there any legislation behind this? If you were to stop dancing and someone were to ask you, what is it that you want? Or what is it that you're trying to accomplish? Do you even have an answer? Nope, we just jamming. It's all good. We having a good time. Look at the most egregious one. It gets worse than that. Look at this. Look at sis. Look at sis. Where is her father? Where is her brother? Where is her uncle? Look, somebody encouraging her. Where's the men? Any men around are in the background encouraging this. Again, what legislation is behind this? What organization do you want them to donate to? Why do you want to get this? No purpose. And I'm not knocking these. Look at right here, a pregnant woman. Why is she out there? Why is she out there? Why is she out there? And it's not even so much me knocking these women. It goes back to what I was saying before. When you don't have that masculine energy around, you don't have that logicness, you don't have that guidance, you don't have that around. You just have all this feminine, nurturing, creative energy, and you just have chaos, but there's no one to structure it or no one to formulate it the right way. But let's get back to what we're supposed to be talking about, which is the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you guys some traits of the divine masculine, and I'm going to read you guys some traits of the divine feminine so you get a better idea of what I'm talking about when I say we're here to complement each other. All right, so here's 7 characteristics of divine femininity, right? Creativity. The divine feminine is the creative force that brings all things into existence. Now, understand, that's both literally and metaphorically, because we all know women birth children into the world, but they also have that creative force, that creative energy, many of which you just seen in those clips that I just showed you. You know, they're trying to express their talents to help people out, but again, like I said before, no guidance. No one's really displaying to them what they're supposed to be doing or how they're supposed to be doing it. So they're just out there wilding out. But it was very creative stuff. Am I lying? Number 2, warrior spirit. Now, again, what did I just show you? Women on the front lines, black women on the front lines, white women on the front lines. Okay, they are willing to do what they need to do. We've seen women out there who were pregnant. We've seen little kids out there, little girls out there. Now, you shouldn't have seen pregnant women or little girls out there. That goes back to the lack of the masculine energy that we need to put back. But I'm just bringing that up to you guys to say that you've seen warrior spirit literally in what I was just showing you. You've seen it all around you. 3, deep sense of justice, balance, and morality. Again, a lot of that in what I just showed you. A lot of that was in what I just showed you. Passive resistance. Okay, stronger awareness of thoughts and feelings. We also know that they're emotional. Now, the problem is we keep telling them that being emotional is being a bad thing, but everyone can't be emotionally unavailable like men. As a matter of fact, one of the things that allows men to be that rock, to be that presence, to be less emotionally involved is because his woman is the emotion in his place. So again, the emotional, that's one of their strongest strengths. That's not a bad thing for women to be emotional. It's a good thing. Somebody has to be. 6, having a many-sided personality. As women, we play many roles: wife, mother, daughter, sister, girlfriend, not to mention the less appreciated roles like baby mama, side chick, mentor, workplace hottie, secretary, sister-in-law, nanny, maid, cook, dancer, entrepreneur, or elder. As a creative energy, we shapeshift to fit the needs of each circumstance. Now, what people would deem as crazy. Oh, she crazy. She acts this way. She acts that way. She's not crazy. She is creative. And she will shift to fit whatever she's getting put into. Hence the saying, we give them lemons and they make lemonade. Creative shifts. And number 7, feeling the need to self-sacrifice or to remain virtuous. Again, black women have many problems of their own going on right now. But you have to give it to them. They are still standing up for black men. And they're standing up for black men while still dealing with the white male patriarchy that these white women are fighting against. Now, let's look at the divine masculine, the energy that we're greatly lacking in the black community and in America right now. All right, so these are some traits of the divine masculine. Now, I'm going to read a few more of these because, like I said, again, this is the energy that we're missing. Responsible. The divine masculine does not run from responsibility. Running from your kids. Vulnerable. The divine masculine shares himself with his divine feminine. What did I just say? Your woman is supposed to be emotional because it gives you the space to be that while allowing you to also still be that rock. Adventurous. The divine masculine comes up with lots of fun adventures for his divine feminine and himself. Constantly courting. Dates. Vacations. Family trips. That's what you're supposed to be doing as a man. Courageous. The divine masculine leaves behind the winner-loser paradigm and trades it in for courage. It takes courage to play the game, any game. A game requires risk, and the divine masculine may not win in the material sense, but the divine masculine knows that the real bounty is the growth that he experiences through trying. We go hard. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We're missing this energy. Solution-oriented. What did I just say? You're dancing, you're doing all this stuff. Is there any legislation behind it? If someone came up to you right now and said, I'm going to give the black community $100 million, do you even know where to put it? What are you trying to do with it? What's your ultimate goal? Again, masculine energy, that's missing. Solutions oriented. The divine masculine is oriented towards solution. He observes and interacts with the world through desiring to solve the problems in it. Logical. A divine masculine uses logic and rationality to ground dreams into reality. Pursuant. This is a big one. We've been hearing black women talk about this one, especially over the last week. Protective. The divine masculine throws away the weakness/strength paradigm and instead moves towards a role of protector or guardians over the one he loves. He notices injustices and works hard to balance out all the unfairnesses that he sees. This is our energy. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Grounded. The divine masculine is grounded, sensible, and wise. Given. The divine masculine was designed to give and provide. Action-oriented. The divine masculine takes action. Leading. The divine masculine is a leader with his divine feminine and with his community. Within his community, I should say. Steadfast. The divine masculine is secure and stable in both his love and affection for his feminine and other major areas of his life. This is the energy we supposed to have, y'all. And this is what we've been missing. Again, I literally showed you guys. I showed you guys clips that shows that we got that divine feminine energy. The men, it's y'all who missing. It's y'all who need to step up. So yeah, our women are hurt. Yeah, our women aren't as feminine as they should be. They might be a little bit masculine like those Amazons from Greece that I told you guys about, but that's because we're not treating them like the ancient Egyptians did. We're not treating them as gods, as queens, as deities, as we should be. We're treating them as something to pump and dump. And when you treat women as a pump and dump, they rebel, as shown by the rebellions that the ancient Greece women had against their men, as shown by the rebellion going on right now amongst white women in the current feminism movement in this country. That's not our movement. That's not what we do. We're not even oppressing you over here. We don't even have the power. Black men don't have the power to oppress black women over here. That's not what we do. But we are disrespected, and we need to get better at that. The divine masculine and the divine feminine. And that's why I'm talking about that. Because like I said, it doesn't matter if you're LGBTQ, okay? Because the body's a vessel. The body's a vessel. This is why in a lot of same-sex relationships, you'll see someone take on the dominant role and you'll see someone take on the feminine role because it's not about the vessel, it's about the energy. The divine masculine and the divine feminine coming together is how you make a relationship work. That's the major key. We've gave you guys numerous solutions. We should be able to put this thing together and get it back on track. And remember, each one teach one. Each one teach one. So if you see a brother out there who's a single dad, he made the wrong choice, and you're a woman and you have some extra energy to give to his daughter or his son from the other side, give it to him. And vice versa. If you're a man and you see a sister has made the wrong choice and you can help her out from the other side, help her out. Be that father figure. Stepdad, stand up. Men in the community, stand up. This is a fact. As for the rest of the cultures who are watching this all around the world, this is what happens when you become a matriarchy. What you saw and what you've seen. We are put on this planet to work as a team, and we need to get back to that. Before I roll these credits, I want to give a special shout out to Oasis Williams. He is the father of my two nieces and had a long-standing relationship with one of my sisters. He has definitely been a part of this project. I discussed this project with him, and the idea to talk about wills so that your family is set upon your untimely demise came from him. So I want to give him a quick montage before we roll these credits. Thank you to everyone who has watched this film. I hope it touched somebody. I hope it helped somebody, because if you could just help one person, then that's better than nothing. I am Director Green, and thank you for supporting No Man's Land. Be blessed in your continued journey.
Oh, look, who baby daddy is that?
Hey babies, just stopping in to let you know that I'm proud of you. Nisha's proud of you, Isaiah's proud of you, your mom's proud of you, my mom's proud of you, your grandparents are proud of you, everybody's proud of you. And if O was still here, he'd be telling you how proud he was of you too. Keep up the hard work and keep becoming the beautiful, gorgeous young ladies that we know you're all gonna be.
Hey. Oh, happy birthday to ya. Happy birthday to ya. Go, Mirror. Happy birthday.